So it's a pleasure to be visiting Pohang City. I think it's really important to be here because this is a UN workshop on how cities can actually become the movement, the energy for the future. Because we're facing multiple crises, including climate change and air pollution, and it is where cities can have most impact. The mayor of Pohang has put in this green way where they are looking at every single aspect of city life and how they can change. And what I'm doing here is providing insight to the global climate change, why it's so important for cities to change, and how cities can change. And in my talk, I talk about, firstly, engaging with citizens. I talk about making sure renewable energy expands, talk about how to decarbonize while supporting heavy industry. And because Pohang is a port and builds ships and has lots of shipping, we need to engage with that sector, as well as greening the city and making sure that the buildings and all the transport network are as green as possible. So as a climate expert who studies both the science and the politics of climate change, I'm very happy to be here and providing my support to this wonderful city. Industrial cities are really important in the world. We can't blame them for the pollution. What we need to do is see that they provide essential resources for the green transition. Pohang is a classic industrial city which has developed through the industrial age, but now realizes that it needs to clean up the industry, but also shift to low carbon industries. The way it is doing it is working with industries. So it's working with the steel industry to say, how can we move from high emission steel manufacturing to much better hydrogen-powered steel manufacturing? It's also then looking into developing other industrial sectors. How do they actually engage and encourage battery manufacturing, EV manufacturing in this industrial sector? So industrial cities are important because they are the economic heartbeat of many countries, and they provide all the resources to build a new green future. But at the same time, they have to deal with pollution, they have to reduce air pollution, and they have to decarbonize those heavy industries in the most supportive and dynamic way possible. So one of the key things with the green transition is renewable energy. Now, the important factor is that if we shift away from fossil fuel energy to electricity, we automatically save about 40% of energy. The reason being is electricity is so much more efficient than burning fossil fuel. So we can save a huge amount of energy, but we need to have that transition. And we need to be able to have the electricity capacity and generation to allow us to expand into different sectors. So if we look at Korea and Pohang, there are so many fantastic opportunities for renewable energy. You have, of course, solar. You have onshore and offshore wind. Being a coastal city has huge potential to develop offshore wind. We also can consider geothermal, hydro, and nuclear as part of the energy mix. At the moment, Korea has 55% of new energy development each year is in the renewable sector. But we have to get that to 100% as quickly as possible, and then it has to go beyond 100% because at the moment, most of the energy for Korea comes from 60 coal-fired power stations, which are incredibly polluting, cause huge issues with air pollution, and they need to be removed from the energy mix and replaced by renewable energy as quick as possible. That will reduce emissions it'll clean up air pollution, which of course will save lives. A lot of people worry about disinformation and misinformation when it comes to climate change. But global survey after survey shows that between 70 and 80% of the public understand climate change and are worried about it and want governments to do something about it. Where the problem comes is when the disinformation is about trying to slow down progress. If we look at, say, a city like Pohang, actually all the things that the mayor wants to do, including cleaning up air pollution, greening the city, improving the public transport, these are all things we should do anyway, which are very positive for citizens, but they also reduce the amount of emissions going into the atmosphere. So I think the way we should communicate about climate change is less about the risks, because everybody knows that. In Korea, they know about the floods, the wildfires, the typhoons, and the heat waves. What they need to know is if we do this action, it's going to have a positive reaction to people's lives. And I think we have to sell and actually communicate all the positives about going net zero. Cleaner air, cleaner water, more jobs, more green cities, healthier cities. So it was a great pleasure last year to present at the Seoul meeting on AI futures. And for me, it's really exciting how AI can actually help us solve some of the issues with climate change. So much so that earlier this year, I ran a summit in London where we had 200 participants from over 80 organizations, including some of the biggest AI companies such as NVIDIA and DeepMind, all of whom came to share possible solutions. AI is a very powerful tool. It's not a solution, it's a tool, something that we can use to make things better. So for example, we can look at transport networks and work out how to make them more efficient using AI. When we look at heavy industry, we can look at how can we actually save emissions, how can we reduce emissions. And when it comes to new technology, say as fusion, we can use AI to investigate what new materials we need to develop to make fusion energy work in the future. So AI will not solve the climate crisis. That has to be us and our political will, but it provides extra tools to make things more efficient, better with new materials that we can use to solve this issue. So everybody asks me how I can stay hopeful in the face of slow politics and the slow transition to a better world. And I think there are two things I take away. The first thing is, if we look at the climate predictions, 10 years ago I was warning people that we were still looking at a 4 to 5.5 degrees warming by the end of the century, and that would have been catastrophic. But because of politics and global political will, and because the shift in economics, which means that renewable energy is much cheaper than fossil fuel, we've already removed that possibility in the future. We're still looking at warming of over 3 degrees, but the political will is there to start changing things. 80% of the world's emissions come from countries that have already pledged to go net zero in this century. And that's really important. I think the second thing that gives me hope is the new generation. The young people coming through understand the risks of climate change. They understand the need to change. they're frustrated by us old people for not moving quick enough, and therefore they are starting to push into big organizations, into universities, and into government, and starting to make those changes. The one thing I will say, if you want to take anything away from my talk, is that we are doing lots of great things to actually help the planet and reduce our global emissions. But every single thing we need to do 5 times faster. And if that's all you take away from this, just remember, but do it all 5 times faster. Pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting me again in wonderful Korea.